All right. Hello, everybody. We are here for a brand new video series. We are just out of release of Core Set 20, pre-release weekend, and there was just one card that, during spoilers, had kind of caught my eye, and I thought it'd be kind of fun, which was Corpse Knight. It's right here below me on the screen. 2/2 for black and white, zombie knight, and when another creature enters the battlefield, each opponent loses one life. So obviously we're a token deck. We make a lot of tokens, and so creatures coming in will drain your opponent rather than dying with something like a blood artist effect. When a creature dies, they lose life, which is another thing in here. But sometimes your creatures don't end up dying, or that like when they die, it's too late, and you want to go faster. So here, if you're attacking with creatures, you're dealing damage, and then your creature's just like playing a Lingering Souls. Like that's 4 damage right there if you get to play Lingering Souls and flash it back. But the real kicker on, not the real kicker, but the other reason on this card that I thought this card was intriguing to play is because it is a knight. It is a 2-drop knight, slots right in with History of Benalia, and it's a card that we might want to play in this deck anyway. So figured it's a new card, we'd test it out and just see how it fits in the shell. I will disclaimer and say I don't think that this will be a long-term competitive card in black-white tokens, but I think it's got some legs. I think it's interesting and certainly will be fun. It'll make our deck a whole lot more aggressive, which is something that we've been trying to look for without, and a lot of people have been doing it, but I think in ways that kind of ruined the deck, and here's a way that kind of slots in nicely with a couple different things that the deck is trying to do. So this is the list. What I did was cut the Orzhov from the main deck to play something more aggressive rather than more defensive. Trimmed down to 3 Bitter Blossoms, which is kind of normal. I've historically run 3. I've lately been running 4, but went for 3 in this build. And then I did trim an Intangible Virtue, mostly because I was wanting to trim some 2-drops and just trim some cards from the deck. But also Virtue obviously does not go with does not pump the Corpse Knight. We still have obviously like all the Lingering Souls, History of Benalias, and Bitter Blossoms that get pumped, and like the Planeswalker tokens that get pumped by Virtue. But it just seemed like something we could trim. Because a lot against some bottom matchups, I ended up trimming 1 Virtue anyway, down to 3. While in other matchups, it's just like one of the best cards you could ask for if you ever have a Lingering Souls and a Virtue, or a Bitter Blossom Virtue will just win. But figured Corpse Knight was also serving somewhat of the purpose of a Virtue, in that it's somewhat of a Lord effect, just in terms of your creatures are like pinging your opponent for 1. So it's a one-shot effect in terms of like buffing your creature, if you will, like giving them 1 power, but without being blocked. So if you kind of think of it from that angle, the Corpse Knight is filling some of the role. Obviously the vigilance is like huge for Virtue sometimes, but that's kind of where we're at. 1-drops I've just kind of left the same. I saw no reason to tweak the numbers. I did want to keep the 2 Collective Brutalities, just to be able to take out sweepers if needed be able to gain some life, since Auriok Champion and Kaya's Wrath are not in this build. And also just realistically, like, we're a little more aggressive. We're draining our opponent, like having a way to cheese out and drain them for 2 life if they happen to be really low on life. Seemed like it'd be something good. Given we have a lot more proactive interaction in this build with the 4 Corpse Knights, and I wanted to go with 4 Planeswalkers and keep all the histories and all that. I wanted to keep some versatile interaction like Collective Brutality. Kai's Wrath, I was just kind of not space for. I almost decided to run 1, and I figured if I was going to run 1 Kai's Wrath, I would much rather just run 1 Generous Gift main deck, so I just did that. Kept it there. 4 histories, obviously, because we're doing the Corpse Knight thing, and that was the point. Lingering Souls, if you're watching these videos, Went with 2 Solemn Visitors, a Lord, and a Gideon. Gideon's just, again, goes well with History of Analia, makes token, and I was basically between these 2 Sorens, sorry, this Gideon and the Soren, I was just trying to get planeswalkers that like make tokens every single turn. That'll go well with the Corpse Knight. And again, just being more of a proactive build of a deck with the Corpse Knight anyway. Figured I wanted more planeswalkers and proactive planeswalkers. Don't really want to trim below 2 Sword and Solemn Visitors. This card is just so fantastic. It's too many times that it's not worth doing less than that. Did cut down to 23 lands. I know a lot of people run like 22, 23, and so I figured I'd trim down to 23, especially being a little more aggressive. I thought I'd try it out and kept the 2 clearings. Cut a Shambling Vent is what I cut. I just debated cutting Field of Ruin or Shambling Vent, but figured I wanted to keep some sort of interaction here against the decks that it matters. Sideboards, kind of same stuff. 3 Stonies, 3 Oriox instead of 4. Just usually I've been doing 2 main, 2 side, but kind of had to trim somewhere. Keeping a Rest in Peace, keeping the Surgical Extirpate combos. Miser's Generous Gift, because I have no disenchant, so I have 1 Generous Gift main, 1 sideboard. I don't think that's enough. I think you kind of want a disenchant in the sideboard and a Generous Gift, or maybe 1 or 2 other ways of dealing with that. Zealous Persecution, I don't know why there's no picture, but just with the Knights and Corpse Knights, I think it's another cool way of like pumping your team, and given the like Knight tokens, you might have blockers in the way. Like having something like this to be able to push through blockers is pretty good. 2 Damping Spheres, I've been playing 2 lately, just because it's good against a good amount of decks. And then what I've been trying new, this isn't unique to this build. I think it's actually something I'm going to be testing in all of my tokens decks right now. This was the slot where I had Settle the Wreckage and or Wrath of God. And I think I'm going to do Winds of Abandon. Now, kind of what I was thinking was where you want Settle is against a deck like, I mean, obviously like any tribal deck. So, Merfolk Elves if you want to, but also like more pertinently, like more problematic humans and spirits. And those decks do a good job of only attacking with like 1 or 2 creatures and like knowing not to play around Settle. Also, like sometimes the Wrath is just like, I've been moving away from Wrath of God, Damnation effects, just because we still do want to keep our tokens. Like obviously we restock better than most decks because of Bitter Blossom and the flashback on Souls, but with the History of Analia tokens, it's kind of just too tough. So I've been running Settle, but this card seemed interesting. Like 6 mana, while being a lot, really is not that much for a Plague Wind. And against a lot of these decks like humans and spirits, like you kind of end up in this eventual board stall that they're going to end up winning because their creatures are bigger and they start attacking and you have to chump block. So you can usually try to keep yourself alive by turn 6. Definitely against spirits, or turn 7 or 8 whenever you get your other land out. Definitely against spirits, but even against humans, like why this card I think is good is if they do get one of those ridiculously fast starts where you can't keep yourself alive, then guess what? It's a 2 mana card that exiles their best creature. They don't even need to be attacking in with it, right? Like they don't need to be like attacking with 1 creature and you left up Settle for a couple turns and eventually you just had to cast it. Like you can just for 2 mana on your turn, just like no questions asked, exile their best creature. So like that's a really good split card to have access to. Spirits, same thing. You can, hopefully snag one of their lords before they get the double Dragskull Captain lockout. But even if they do, what's cool about this is you just exile their whole team. Also seems really good against like Phoenix decks. Just being able to, like you're saying, like just take out a Thing in the Ice if you need to, or take out a Phoenix if you really have to. But those decks have like historically or in my opinion, have done a good job of playing around settles. So like if they don't have to, they won't attack with like all 3 phoenixes. They'll attack, or 4 phoenixes, or whatever they have out in the play. They'll attack with 1 or 2, and then a thing in the ice, or 1 and thing in the ice, or 2 phoenixes and not attack with thing, or 2 phoenixes and leave the other phoenix back just in case you have a settle. So this way it just gets them all back for real. Obviously it doesn't work great against Hogak because they can just like sacrifice all their creatures in response, so like they'll never actually get exiled. They'll still go to the graveyard, but it makes them empty their board one way or the other, so it kind of serves damnation type effect. And then Dredge, of course, it's good, and I don't know, it seems like a lot of matchups. Eldrazi Tron, even Tron, like against Wormcoil Lineages and stuff. So yeah, actually I'm talking myself up. Maybe this card's like even better than I'm getting credit for. Maybe I want more than just 1 in the sideboard, or maybe even I want 1 main. It's actually a lot of matchups where it seems like it's really good now that I think about it more. Anyway, kind of got off topic, but I think that's the last card. Hope you guys enjoy the match videos.